All right, buckle up for this one, folks, because some researchers in China are really shaking things up in the AI world. They've built an open source model.
Yeah.
It's going head to head with OpenAI's O1 model, and it's looking pretty fierce.
Yeah, and it all comes down to this concept of inference-time scaling, which OpenAI's O1 really, really brought into the spotlight. Basically, what it showed was that giving AI more computing power, while it's actually like thinking through a question, leads to way better reasoning
It's
ability.
almost like if we as humans could just, access some extra brain power when we needed to solve a tough problem.
Exactly, exactly. And up until now, open source models, especially those working with images and language, we call those VLMs, well, they haven't quite been able to match that level of reasoning.
So it's like they're missing a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, you could say that. Early open source VLMs were kind of like trying to solve a puzzle without really looking at the picture on the box. They try to answer directly, and that often led to mistakes, especially with those really complex questions.
So that's where this new model comes in, right? This LLaVA-o1. It sounds like these researchers basically took OpenAI's O1 concept and figured out how to make it work in the open source world.
That's exactly it. And the key difference here is that LLaVA-o1 doesn't just jump straight to an answer. It goes through a whole multi-stage reasoning process, almost like it's breaking the problem down into smaller, more manageable steps.
So it's thinking out loud to find the best solution.
Precisely.
So let's break down these stages a bit. First, we've got the summary stage where the model figures out what the question is actually asking.
Right. And then if there's an image involved, it moves on to the caption stage. It's really zeroing in on those visual details that are relevant to the question.
Kind of like highlighting the important clues in a picture.
Exactly.
And then we get to the really juicy part, the reasoning stage.
Yeah.
This is where LLaVA-o1 takes all that information, the summary, the image caption, if there is one, and starts to build a logical argument, step by step, to try and get to an answer.
And finally, we have the conclusion stage, which is basically the clear, concise answer based on all that work the model has done. And it's important to note that the user only ever sees this final conclusion.
All that other stuff, all that thinking out loud is happening behind the scenes.
Right. It's like the model is showing its work, but then just giving you the final answer.
And this is where things get even more interesting. They've integrated something called stage-level beam search into LLaVA-o1. And it's like having multiple options at each stage of reasoning and then picking the best one before moving on to the next.
Yeah, it's way more efficient than some of those older methods. Imagine instead of writing like 5 different essays and then choosing the best one, you're refining each paragraph as you go. That ultimately leads to a stronger final product.
Makes sense. So to train LLaVA-o1, they use this massive data set, right? 100,000 image question answer pairs, covering all sorts of tasks, multi-turn question answering, chart interpretation, even geometric reasoning.
Yeah, they really put it through its paces. And get this, they actually used GPT-4o to generate the detailed reasoning steps for each example in the dataset.
It's like giving LLaVA-o1 a roadmap for how to tackle different types of problems.
Exactly. A roadmap, a set of guidelines, a way of thinking.
Pretty ingenious. So with all that training and all this clever design, how did LLaVA-o1 actually perform? Let's get to the results.
Okay, well, the results are pretty amazing, actually. LLaVA-o1 didn't just beat other open source models. It actually outperformed some closed source models from, giants like Google and OpenAI. And it did all this after training on a relatively small data set, too.
Hold on. It actually beat some of the big guys. That's huge. What kind of improvement are we talking about here?
We're talking a significant jump, like an average benchmark score increase of 6.9%. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but in the AI world, that's a huge leap.
So this 6.9% jump, what does that actually mean for the real world? What's that? So what?
Well, think about tasks that were previously out of reach for open source models. Things like accurately interpreting complex medical images or
Right.
understanding really dense legal documents. These are things that are now within the realm of possibility.
And because it's open source, researchers who maybe don't have huge budgets suddenly have access to a level of AI power they could only dream of before.
Exactly.
It's not just about the numbers. It's about making powerful AI accessible to everyone.
Leveling the playing field.
I like that.
And remember, they were only able to test this stage-level beam search with limited computing power. Imagine what those results would look like with even more resources behind it.
Mind-blowing. This feels like a major turning point in the AI landscape. If an open source model can already compete with the big players, what does that mean for the future of AI development?
Well, it definitely raises some interesting questions. Could we see a shift towards a more collaborative, democratized approach to AI, Will the big tech companies adapt and embrace this open source movement, or are they going to double down on their proprietary systems?
It's like we're watching a revolution unfold in real time. LLaVA-o1 has proven that open source AI is a force to be reckoned with. What do you think? Will the future of AI be dominated by open source models, or will these big tech companies manage to hold on to their lead?
It's tough to say for sure, but one thing is certain: the landscape is changing rapidly.
That's for sure.
And that's what makes it so exciting. This development has the potential to reshape the entire industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
LLaVA-o1 is definitely thrown down the gauntlet. But speaking of reshaping the industry, there's one more crucial aspect of all this that we need to talk about. One that could have a massive impact on the accessibility and affordability of AI technology as a whole.
You're talking about the potential cost savings associated with open source models, right?
Exactly. Developing and training these sophisticated AI models can be incredibly expensive, especially for smaller companies or research groups. But open source models like LLaVA-o1 offer a much more cost-effective path.
That's a key point. Open source eliminates the need for those expensive licensing fees or proprietary software, which means these powerful AI tools become accessible to a much wider range of users.
And that increased accessibility could lead to a much more diverse and innovative AI ecosystem, with contributions coming from all corners of the globe.
Absolutely. Imagine a world where cutting-edge AI tech is within reach of startups, nonprofits, even individual researchers. The possibilities are endless.
It's inspiring to think about the positive impact this could have on society. From accelerating scientific research to tackling complex social challenges, the applications are vast. We're talking about a potential paradigm shift in how we approach problem solving as a species.
It really is a game changer. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. As with any major technological advancement, there are always challenges to consider.
Right, no such thing as a free lunch, especially in the world of AI. What are some of the hurdles we need to be thinking about as open source AI continues to evolve?
Well, one key challenge is reproducibility. Open source models are all about transparency, so anyone can access and modify the code. That's great for collaboration, but it also means that making sure everyone gets the same results can be tricky.
I see what you mean. If everyone's tinkering with the code, you could end up with different versions performing differently, making it tough to compare apples to apples.
Exactly. And that becomes really important when we're talking about using AI in real-world situations, things like healthcare or self-driving cars, where reliability is absolutely paramount.
So how do we tackle this reproducibility puzzle in the open source world?
Well, establishing clear standards and benchmarks is crucial. We need ways to measure how well these models perform and ensure those results can be replicated consistently, regardless of who's running the code.
So it's about creating a level playing field for evaluation, like a
Right.
universal scoring system for open source AI.
Precisely. And this is where organizations like the Allen Institute for AI and OpenAI can play a vital role. They have the expertise and the resources to develop these standardized evaluation frameworks that can benefit the entire community.
It sounds like collaboration is key, not just in developing these models, but also in figuring out how to evaluate them fairly and consistently.
Absolutely. Open source AI thrives on community involvement. It's about sharing knowledge, working together, and collectively pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
This has been an incredible deep dive into the world of open source AI. LLaVA-o1 is a true testament to the power of innovation and collaboration. And it feels like we're witnessing the dawn of a new era in artificial intelligence.